I'm going to show you how you can rank highly when it comes to Google's new SEO. So Google's AI mode, Google's AI overviews, and the game is continuing to change. Traditional SEO is not quite dead yet, but the way we're driving traffic to our websites, that's changing over time. The way we're driving conversions, that's changing. So I'm here to help you get ahead of the game. First and foremost, when you think about AI overviews as an example, so that's the snippet that you see at the top. Maybe it's like almost like an AI answer that's answering your question above the search results. You're seeing that maybe 45% of the time when it comes to informational queries, such as people looking for like, where is Tokyo, for example, right? And then 18% of the time you might be looking at, AI overview will pop up for like a transactional query. And so an example for that might be, cheap flights to Japan. Google is changing as a search engine because it's being forced to change. When you have ChatGPT with 800 million users, Google is still very much the big player in the space, right? When it comes to search, they have about 42% market share, and I think it's actually growing again. When you look at ChatGPT, it's still below 1%, even though it's still growing. And I would say that Google is actually growing even more. When you look at Gemini versus the market share of ChatGPT was much higher before. I think it's like 85% now market share for LLMs, whereas Gemini now is like 11 or 12% or something like that. And Gemini is owned by Google. And so it's important for you to know how this ecosystem works because Google has Gemini, and then within Google search, there's AI mode, there's AI overviews, which is powered by Gemini, and they have some of the best models out there. So that's why it's important for you to understand how this is going to work. So when it comes to being identified in these AI mode searches, for example, AI mode actually has this thing called query fan out, which is when it looks at 10 to 30, maybe even more sources when you're asking a question. And so your job is to get cited by these credible sources because Google's going to look at credible sources, right? They want you to appear in these different listicles, for example. Maybe they want you in the conversation when it comes to Reddit. Maybe they're looking at YouTube as well. They're looking at these sources and then determining where you might deserve to sit. And then they're also going to look at click data to see who's clicking on these things, who's engaging the most with these different types of results. And then they're combining a whole host of different things to determine whether you deserve to continue to be served in these AI overviews or not. So some of the key things that you can do too is making sure that you're addressing different questions, okay? Maybe you're addressing different questions, maybe there's pro cons and things like that. You want to ideally provide the canonical answer, or you want to have the canonical page, the most complete page possible. So then you can have different elements of your pages be sourced. And maybe Google might just look at that page as the default source, and that's how you're going to capture the majority of value. So how can you put out complete answers now that other people can't do? In the olden days of SEO, I had a friend, Brian Dean, he has this technique called the skyscraper technique. And the skyscraper technique is just looking at all the answers that are there and then doing 10x better than what's already there. So if someone's doing 1,000 words, maybe you're doing 10,000 words or so. If someone is doing maybe 1 or 2 videos, maybe you're doing more than that, right? And so you get the point. You're just trying to make something that's better than what's already out there, that's already getting cited. The skyscraper technique is always a technique that's going to be relevant no matter where SEO evolves to in the near future. And the next thing that we want to talk about here, let's call this number 3, is semantic credibility. And what that means is what I alluded to earlier. You want your brand to be mentioned by these reputable sources. It could be a very engaging Reddit thread. It could be a YouTube channel that's interviewing you. These are all places where your brand can be cited. This is where your brand credibility can stand out more because this wasn't trackable maybe 15 years ago when it came to Google search. Now it is because these models are so much stronger and they could look at so many different things that surround your brand and then determine whether you deserve to be cited or not. Number 4 is you want to make sure that your content is being formatted correctly so Google and its AI can easily extract it. So you want to make sure that you have the right H1 tags, the right headings, right? You want to make sure that you have the right bullet list. You might want to have different tables that show, the pros and cons. You want to make sure that you have FAQ schema as well so it can pull from frequently asked questions. You also want to make sure that your site is quick. Okay, if your site's not quick enough, still your website's being crawled, right? Your content is being crawled. You want to make sure that you have a good user experience. Your website's being crawled at a very fast rate, and you want to make sure that you're making it easy for whatever it is that's looking at your website, whether it's humans or machines looking at your website. You want to make sure it's easy, so then it's easier for them to cite you when the time comes. And the next thing that's worth mentioning is that you want your content to be refreshed regularly. There are studies out there that show that top LLMs that are out there, could be Google's, could be someone else's, but you look at the last 12 months, 95% of that content has been updated that they're showing, okay? So 95% of content is fresh content. It's not stale content. And so that means that the old way of doing SEO where you're updating your content, you want to be doing more of that. And so internally for us, we use our product called ClickFlow to update, to delete, to consolidate content. And it's going to become even more valuable in a world where more and more AI slop is being produced. And so you want to make sure, just like you're looking at your content as a garden, you want to tend to your garden. Sometimes you need to trim, sometimes you need to plant new trees. categories, that's how you might want to look at it, right? And in addition to publishing content regularly, you want to make sure that you're publishing multimodal assets where possible. And what I mean by that is that, for example, you might have content in text format. You might have content in video format. You might have content in audio format. You might have content in just like a photo format. But these LLMs, Google's for example, they can look at all different types of assets that you have, and they're not just going to cite your text anymore. It used to just be the internet was much more focused on text and these search engines were focused on text. That's not the case anymore. And again, Google has some of the best models, if not the best model out there. And that's going to help you because if your competitors aren't willing to go multimodal and you are, guess who's going to be cited more? Guess who's going to capture more conversions? You are. Also, let's not forget about trust signals. And so trust signals could be your reviews. You want to make sure that your reviews are optimized. You're being spoken about on the internet in a positive way. What people are saying about you on Reddit. Those things all matter now because when you look at Gemini, it is looking at brand sentiment. Okay. And it's going to continue to be able to because these are all trust sources and they want to provide the best possible answer for their users. So why wouldn't they look at these? And the next piece is focusing on creating content, buyers who are ready to make a move. And what that means is more transactional content. That means cheap basketball shoes, for example, or best digital marketing agency. These are all good examples of transactional scenarios that you want to optimize for because the old way of doing SEO might have been 80% on more informational content and then 20% transactional. Now I look at it as a little more flipped now where you're going for more 80% transactional content and then 20% informational because a lot of situations when people are searching for things, they're looking to research, they're searching for these transactional situations. They might start at the very top, but AI overviews might cannibalize that content. And so you want to appear when people are ready to make a decision, and then hopefully people will come to your website or your app and then make a decision from there. If you want to run personalized LinkedIn ads at scale and get these ads up in minutes instead of weeks, you've got to check out Carrot. So Carrot, Karrot.ai, will allow you to create personalized ads on LinkedIn, personalized landing pages. We are also adding in different automations to spin up these ads quickly. We have different creative options as well that will integrate even cool things like Google Nano Banana. A lot of cool things coming down the pipeline. If you are serious about B2B marketing, you're serious about LinkedIn, you gotta check out Carrot, and we'll see you on the other side. And the last piece I'll say for now is that you want to treat each publish like a launch. You want to push engagement everywhere. And so, for example, when we push a YouTube video out, we're pushing it to our email list. Maybe we're pushing it out on social. We're trying to signal to Google's AI that this is good, that this is worthy, and that multiple sources are publishing it. So these are just a handful of things that you can do to rank highly when it comes to optimizing for Google's AI, Gemini, AI overviews, Google's AI mode. These are just a handful of things. I guarantee you, if you do these things, you're going to do a lot better than 99% of people out there. And by the way, if you want to go even deeper on this, I talk about how I'm using AI SEO to 100x our traffic and conversions. You can check out this video where I had a talk at HubSpot's Inbound conference.